There are places that feel wrong the moment you arrive. Not dangerous, not obviously abandoned, just wrong. A silence that seems too complete. Streets too empty for the hour. Curtains that move though no one is there. People who smile half a second too late. The sort of place where normality feels rehearsed. Tell me something, have you ever visited a town that seemed to be waiting for you? Not welcoming you, waiting. As though your arrival completes something. Because places remember, long after people forget. They remember footsteps, arguments, births, deaths, promises made in doorways, names carved into old wood. Some towns hold history like dust, others hold it like a wound. And tonight's episode begins in a place where memory did not merely linger, it took root. 6 first-person confessions, 6 witnesses, 6 descents into a town that should not still exist. A place where houses remember their occupants. Roads return travelers to streets they never chose. Church bells ring for people who have already died. And the most terrifying part? No one inside the town seems aware that anything is wrong. By the final story, the question will no longer be whether the town is haunted. The question will be, who is left alive enough to leave it? Dim the lights, listen carefully. And if you ever find yourself driving through a place that does not appear on your map, do not stop. Welcome to episode 19, The Town That Forgot It Was Dead. My name is Jonah Mercer, and before I begin, I need to ask you something. Have you ever taken a road you don't remember choosing? Not a wrong turn, not a missed exit. I mean that strange moment when you suddenly become aware that you are somewhere unfamiliar, and you cannot remember the last 10 miles. Because that is how it began for me. I was driving through Western Virginia in late autumn, business trip, rain on the windshield, 2-lane roads cutting through dense woodland. The kind of route GPS insists is faster. The forest had already gone dark, though it was barely past 6. Branches scraped against the roof of the car whenever the road narrowed. I remember the radio losing signal first, music dissolving into static, then silence. The sort of silence that makes the engine sound too loud. Then I saw the sign, old wood, white paint peeling in long curls, 1 arrow pointing left, and beneath it in black letters, Mercer, 4 miles. Tell me honestly, if you saw your own surname on a road sign in the middle of nowhere, would you keep driving? At first I assumed it was a place name, a coincidence. Maybe Mercer Hollow, Mercer Ridge. Small rural towns often carry old family names, but there was no second word, just Mercer. And something about the lettering unsettled me. Not the style, the freshness. The black paint looked newly applied, still glossy in the rain, as if the sign had been waiting for that exact moment to be read. I should have stayed on the main road. Instead, I turned. That was the first mistake. The road narrowed almost immediately. No lane markings, dense trees pressing close on both sides, fog beginning to collect low across the asphalt. The kind of pale ground fog that makes the road ahead seem unfinished. 4 miles should have taken minutes. Instead, I drove for nearly 20. No houses, no lights, no other vehicles, only forest. Then the fog broke, and the town appeared. Tell me something. Have you ever arrived somewhere that felt less discovered than revealed? That was Mercer, a small town cupped between dark hills. Main Street lined with old brick storefronts, a diner, a hardware shop, a church with a tall steeple, warm yellow street lamps reflecting on wet pavement. Everything looked inhabited. And yet, there was no movement, no pedestrians, no passing cars, no sound beyond the engine and distant wind. Stillness, the kind that feels arranged. Then, as I drove past the diner, every person inside turned to look at me. At once. Forks suspended midair, coffee cups halfway lifted, no conversation, just faces at the window, watching, waiting. Tell me honestly, if an entire room of strangers stops moving the moment you arrive, what does that make you? I parked outside the only motel, a single-story building, vacancy sign glowing red. The receptionist, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pinned tightly back, looked at me for a long moment before smiling. Then she said, "We've been expecting you, Mr. Mercer." I never gave my name, not at the desk, not outside, nowhere. I asked how she knew. Her smile didn't change. Everyone knows when someone comes home. Home. The word sat wrong. I had never been to this town, at least not that I remembered. She handed me a brass key, room 4. No card swipe, no paperwork, no ID requested. When I asked about payment, she simply said, "You've already paid. Tell me something. If a place seems to know you before introduction, what exactly has it been remembering?" The room was clean, almost painfully neat. Bed made tight, curtains drawn, a framed black and white photograph above the desk. At first I barely noticed it. Then I stepped closer. My blood ran cold. The photograph showed the town's main street, older, perhaps 1950s. Different shop fronts, vintage cars, a crowd gathered outside the church. And standing at the very front, a man with my face, not similar, not familial. My exact face, same eyes, same jawline, same slight scar near the chin, wearing a dark wool coat from another era. On the back of the frame in faded ink, someone had written, "Jonah Mercer, Founders Day, 1956. Tell me honestly, if your own face appears in a photograph decades older than your birth, what part of you remains rational?" I barely slept. At 2:13 a.m. church bells rang. Slow, measured, 6 tolls, then silence, then footsteps in the hallway, heavy, deliberate, stopping outside my door. No knock, just presence. I stood on the other side of the door, barely breathing. Then a man's voice from the corridor, my voice, whispered, "Come outside, they're ready." I did not open the door. By morning, I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. Until I stepped outside, the entire town was gathered in the square. Every resident, standing in silence, facing the church. And at the center of the crowd, a freshly dug grave, the headstone blank, waiting. Tell me something. If an entire town gathers around an empty grave the morning after your arrival, who do you think it belongs to? The silver-haired receptionist stood beside it. She looked at me with something like relief, then said, "It's taken you 70 years to come back." I asked what she meant. She simply pointed toward the church doors. They were open now. Inside, candlelight flickered, and at the altar, another photograph, larger, framed in dark wood. This one showed the aftermath of a fire. The church half burned, smoke damage everywhere, a date stamped below. November 12, 1956. The date the town officially disappeared from every map in the county archives. I know that now because I looked it up later. A fire, a landslide, no survivors, entire town presumed destroyed, abandoned, buried, gone. But the people standing in the square were very much there, watching me, waiting, as though something unfinished had finally returned. And that was only the beginning. Because by the next story, I would learn the town does not merely remember its dead, it mistakes the living for them. My name is Jonah Mercer, and if you listened to the first story, then you already know how I arrived. The road sign, the fog, the town that should not have existed, the motel receptionist who already knew my name, the grave waiting in the square. What I did not understand then was this: Mercer was not haunted in the way people imagine. No shadows in windows, no pale faces at the end of corridors, no whispering from beneath floorboards. The horror was slower, colder, more intimate, because every person in that town behaved as if they were alive, and every detail of their routine had been preserved with the terrifying precision of memory. A diner serving breakfast, shop doors opening at 8, street lamps turning off at dawn, church bells marking the hour. Everything normal, except the bells. The bells only rang when someone living entered town, and that morning they had rung 6 times for me. Tell me something. If an entire place seems built around your arrival, would you still tell yourself it was coincidence? I should have left. Every instinct said leave. Get in the car, drive back through the fog, find the main road, pretend this never happened. But fear does strange things. Sometimes it doesn't make you run. Sometimes it makes you stay because leaving feels too simple, too easy. And part of the mind begins needing explanation more than safety. So I stayed. That was the second mistake. The townspeople had gathered around the grave in absolute silence. No murmuring, no shuffling, no sound but the faint movement of wind through the churchyard trees. Men in coats darkened by morning mist, women holding gloved hands before them, children standing unnaturally still, all facing the open plot, and every face carried the same expression. Recognition, not surprise, not curiosity, recognition, as if they had been waiting for a missing piece to return. The silver-haired woman from the motel stood at the front. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "We thought you might never hear the bells again." I asked what they meant. She turned to the church steeple, old stone, dark slate roof, a bell chamber visible behind weathered timber slats. Then she said, "They only ring for the ones who still have a heartbeat." Tell me honestly, if a town of strangers tells you that you are the only living person present, do you laugh? Or do you count the heartbeats you can hear? Because I did, mine, fast, loud, painfully present. And then I listened for theirs. Nothing, no coughing, no breath steaming in the cold air, no shifting weight, nothing human in the way bodies usually occupy space, just stillness. Then a little girl near the front row turned to look at me, yellow ribbon in her hair, no older than 8. She smiled and asked, "Did it hurt when you left us?" The question struck like ice, because I had no answer. Not because I didn't know what she meant, because some buried part of me did. A sense smoke, panic, a bell ringing over and over, then darkness, a memory trying to surface. Tell me something, what is more frightening? A town full of ghosts, or a place that seems to share memories you do not yet remember? The church doors stood open, candles flickering inside. Every person in the square slowly turned toward the entrance, then began walking, all at once. No one spoke, no one broke formation, just rows of people moving in quiet procession. I followed, because not following felt worse. The inside of the church smelled of wax, old wood, and something older. Smoke, not fresh, embedded. A fire long past that had never fully left the beams. The pews were filled within seconds. Every seat occupied, except the front pew, center aisle, waiting for me. Tell me honestly, if an empty seat seems specifically reserved for you in a room full of dead-eyed strangers, do you sit? I did. My hands were shaking. The priest stepped to the pulpit. Tall man, thin face, black robes too old for the present day. And when he looked up, it was my face, older, severe, but unmistakably mine. The room tilted. Every rational thought began slipping. He opened a worn leather ledger and read aloud, "Founders Day Service, November 12, 1956. The exact date from the photograph, the fire, the town's disappearance. Then he looked directly at me and said, "You promised you would ring the bells." The words detonated something in my memory, a flood, not complete, fragments. Church hall decorated for celebration, children laughing, town banners, a storm gathering outside, someone shouting about the hillside, a lantern overturned, curtains catching flame, people screaming, smoke filling the rafters, and above all, the bell rope in my hands. I was pulling it, again and again, trying to warn them, trying to save them. Tell me something, if a place forces memory back into you piece by piece, is it helping you, or feeding on recognition? I stood abruptly. The priest smiled sadly, then said, "You left before the fire took you." The room went silent. Every face turned toward me. He continued, "You escaped, we did not." My throat tightened, because suddenly the fragments aligned. I had not died in 1956, but someone with my face had lived here. Jonah Mercer, founder's grandson, bell ringer. The one who fled before the landslide sealed the valley, the one who survived, the one the town never forgave. And somehow, for reasons I still do not understand, they believed I had returned, not as a descendant, not as a coincidence, as him. Tell me honestly, if the dead mistake you for the one who abandoned them, how do you prove you are not the same man? The priest gestured toward the tower stairs, a narrow stone spiral climbing into darkness, then said, "The bells must ring again before nightfall." I asked what would happen if they didn't. Every candle in the church flickered. The townspeople spoke in unison for the first time, soft, monotone, terrifying. "Then the road will close." The road, the only way out. My pulse spiked. I ran outside to check the car. The road beyond the square, gone. Not blocked, gone. Beyond the churchyard gates was only dense fog and forest. No tarmac, no rope back. As if the road had been erased the moment I entered. Tell me something, if the only exit disappears until you complete a ritual, what exactly are you trapped inside? By dusk, the church bells rang again. Not because I wanted them to, because something in the town compelled it. I climbed the tower stairs, dust thick in the air, wooden beams blackened by old fire. At the top, the great bronze bell hung above me, ancient, cracked along one edge. The rope was already swaying, as if recently used. Then I saw him, a man standing in the bell chamber, my face, older, burn marks along one side of the skin, clothes from another era, eyes hollow with grief. He looked at me and quietly said, "You left us here." Then he handed me the rope, and below us, the entire town waited in silence. Some places do not haunt you. They negotiate with you. They take your memories apart and ask which ones deserve to continue existing. And in doing so, they reveal something far more unsettling than ghosts: the fragility of identity itself. Because if a town can decide which version of your grief is real, then perhaps memory was never as private as you thought. Perhaps it was always something shared, something negotiated, something selected. So tonight, as you close your eyes, consider this carefully. If every memory you carry had to justify its existence, which ones would survive you, and which ones would not survive being remembered correctly? You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers TV, where some places don't trap you. They decide what part of you gets to leave. Until next time, be careful what you remember too clearly, because somewhere out there might be a place waiting to agree with you.
You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where every truth leaves a scar. If the story unsettled you, good. That means you were listening. Subscribe and stay close to the dark, because the next whisper might be for you.